Finally, after over 8 years of searching, I found the one that they call Night Violet. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Tonight we're documenting one of the very early Les Paul studios. The catch is, its color is very special. That's right, the purple burst that I've been talking about. It's officially known as Night Violet, and this was primarily used in 1984 and early 85 on low-end Gibson models just to give them something special, because it's not just a finish on the top. It's like a Les Paul custom in the fact that they finished and bursted the edges, the backs of the bodies, as well as the neck and the headstock, including your edges over here. It's just such a cool custom shop edition of an early Les Paul studio. But besides the Les Paul studio, you can also find it on the then newish 80s style Explorers and Flying Vs, the thrash metal alder-bodied ones. Those things are pretty cool in their own right and also have the back paint jobs, which you don't find on many of them. Now, since the color existed, there is the opportunity that any other model at this time could have also gotten it. I'm personally really hoping to one day find a Night Violet Les Paul custom. I don't know if it exists, but if it does, I hope to find it. But maybe there's some high-end Flying Vs or Explorers, or maybe even a late run The Paul. Just as proof of that concept, Randy actually has in his ledgers an EDS-1275, the double neck, done up in Night Violet, as a one-off produced in mid-1985, shipped off in October. However, don't confuse Night Violet with Plum Wine Burst. They look kinda similar, but Night Violet has the black border, whereas Plum Wine Burst has more of a reddish border, into a slightly more pink hue. And that's not to say that the Night Violet is the most purpley purple burst guitar ever out there, but as far as I can think of, this is one of the earliest runs of a purple Les Paul. And that's why it's always been so fascinating to me, because there used to be a real shortage of purple Pauls out there. Besides this one, you would have the Les Paul Goddess, done around the mid-2000s. And sure, are there one-offs and small batch runs here and there in the custom shop that were purple? Certainly, but it was hard to find it. Nowadays, we're spoiled with the mod collection pumping out purple guitars all the time. We've got the standard dark purple burst series on many different models. Another great example of a small batch run is the Batson Flight Les Paul Custom, the original one. Gibson finally woke up under new ownership that people love purple guitars, but before all that, it was Night Violet and the Goddess Les Paul as far as a small production run that many people knew about. The additional cool thing about the Night Violet studios is they were official custom shop editions. Now, what this means in this particular time period is it was a limited run, and they got a special name. Thanks to Randy Leonard, we know it was Special 4023 for these particular ones. He only had one in his book. It's not this one, but he actually had a note saying they came stock with gold strings. Does anybody remember seeing these in the store with gold strings? Ever since I learned that, I'm going to have to pause this review while I wait for my new gold strings to come in, because that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, to be fair, Randy vaguely remembers the brand of those strings being Maxima, but there is a company using their same formula called Optima, so I'm installing this one, a signature set done by them for Brian May. So if you're wondering how many of these exist, we don't exactly know. Generally speaking, I see about 1 to 3 show up per year. Now, sometimes it's the same guitar changing hands. So I hesitate to put any type of number, but I'd imagine anywhere between 25 and 50 might be accurate. We'll just have to keep on documenting the serial numbers, but so far they've all been 1984, early 1985. But besides our cool purple burst finish, you'll also notice these came stock with gold hardware, which is pretty cool for a baseline Les Paul Studio. When the Les Paul Studio was first introduced in 1983, it was a silkscreen Gibson logo guitar that featured a maple neck and a slightly thinner alder body, and had dot inlays on a rosewood fretboard. And there were optional binding offerings. So the regular Les Paul Studio is exactly what I just told you. There's no binding. The Studio Standard then incorporates the standard style binding on the body as well as the neck. The Custom, same thing, just multi-banded layers and sometimes fancier finishes. Occasionally you'll find an ebony fretboard here or there, but it's important to know 83, 84, and early 85, the original studios do in fact have maple necks and alder bodies. One of these days I'll get a nice natural one to document that phenomenon. It still has a multi-piece maple top on that multi-piece alder body. They're generally 3 pieces. And what do we know about alder bodies and maple necks in this era? they tend to cause extreme finish checking. And that's part of the reason I ended up picking this one up, because it looked ridiculously clean. The story was this guy bought it when he was in high school because his then girlfriend loved purple. He then sparingly played it and then took it into his local shop recently. They put it online. I bought this thing instantly because I've been looking for one of these in clean shape without any dings. And unfortunately, we've got a ding on this edge over here, which is an absolute bummer on an otherwise very good example, because not even the headstock is like super checked. It's there, but it's not bad at all. And a lot of times you'll find some weirdness along the edges of your fretboard. This one is pretty good shape outside of that ding, and we've got some stand rash marks here. I suppose beggars can't be choosers with this particular model and color. I'm still elated to have it. The other cool thing about Les Paul Studios is, just like today, they came stock with the same electronics as the higher end guitars, but the difference being from 1984, that means we have legitimate Tim Shaw PAF pickups with gold covers. That's why you find a lot of times these will be stripped of their parts or original pickups to restore higher end things like a straight up Les Paul Custom. Because generally speaking, Les Paul Studios are not the most expensive guitars out of any era. However, the 80s ones have a cult following because you can get a vintage guitar technically, but that slightly thinner body and Alder construction makes them lighter. First impressions, I would actually say the neck is a little bit heavier than the body. And I've seen these with various cases over the years, but generally speaking, I would imagine it would have came from the shop with a Gen 3 chainsaw case, very similar to what we have today. It's got our Gibson badge on the outside. Gen 3 introduces these slightly more reliable metal latches. The part that fails on these is where they connect to the plastic right there. And the other downside being is these are very clunky cases. Like, it's okay if you have one or two, but when you have a huge collection, they take up a whole lot of room. And unfortunately, no additional paperwork to share. But let's go ahead and get this one thrown on over to the workbench, clean her up, and document her to her fullest potential. After a little bit of TLC, look at her shine again. Let's go ahead and figure out all the secrets to the Night Violet. So we're going to start with our neck pickup. It's got something unique to it. What on earth is that? A sticker? Well, what's really strange is it has the usual Tim Shaw markings. 372 tells you the model of the pickup, 10 stands for October, 84 standing for 1984. But what about our bridge pickup? It has our usual ink stamped one that's kind of faded away, hard to read now, with the patent number. I have seen this a time or two, but I thought I'd reach out to Randy to see if he had any info for us. And he was able to confirm that, yeah, he does remember that from time to time, and he thinks maybe they were just experimenting. Might have been more cost effective to use a sticker rather than ink stamp, because it's really not too much longer after this, 1985. After that, they just stopped stamping them altogether for the last 2 years of production. I am tempted to peel off that sticker to see if the patent number is still underneath there, but I'd hate to mess with the history of this guitar, so I'm gonna leave that alone, because from what I've seen, all the solderwork looks stock. But here's what the cavity of a Night Violet Studio will look like. This is a great area to see the finish non-aged. Because here's the thing. A clear coat on a Gibson will age, and it can sometimes change the hues of guitars. For example, look at Pelham Blue. It can either be blue or green. That's because of the aged clear coat. Here's a Night Violet that showed up just a couple of days after I purchased this one. It's so yellowed over. The purple is like a really deep plum at that point. I wasn't sure if I liked that or not, but I thought it was worth throwing into this episode. It's kind of a variation on this hue. But even take a look at the back control plate cavity of that one. You can see it did indeed start Night Violet. It's just changed. But besides just our finish, we can see our exposed Alder body right here, as well as the line where the maple top joins over top of that. Now, it's looking to me that the body might be 3 pieces, and I'm sure we have a 3-piece top, because if you get it in the light just right, you can see the seam line running right along here. That's not a finish check. And then the other one is right here. You can see it right there on the black. So it's actually just a little bit of an offset spotlight. That's cool. But our bridge pickup cavity has even more fun, seeing the unadulterated purple finish, which is looking a lot like Barney purple at this point. During the live stream I did of this one cleaning it, a lot of people were saying this was pink, and I totally understand where they're coming from, because it is kind of a pinkish purple. But here you can see our wires going through, and more of our Alder body. But as far as our actual thickness, I get just a little under 2 inches at this particular area, and 2.23 directly in the center. So it's not that much thinner than a regular Les Paul. Let's go ahead and grab our pickup readings. 7.23 in our bridge. Neck position about the same, 7.22. And the middle, just for fun, 3.62. So it seems to be a fairly nicely matched set of Tim Shaw PAFs. Here's what the gold on the outside of those looks like after a nice polishing. It doesn't have perfect gold, but it's not the worst I've ever seen. But for our bridge and tailpiece, it's just your regular ones of the era. Nashville style, full weight. As is typical, the bridge is collapsed, but it is the original one. You can see the marking right there, made in Germany, and in really good condition for its age. Same thing is true for our tailpiece. The gold's just immaculate. Sometimes people will play it, their hand will just leave a mark and it slowly eats away at it. These are mighty fine. But here's what one of these looks like without a pick guard in case you wanted to take it off or remove your poker chip, and with your guard back on it. I could go either way, but my favorite part of this guitar has to be the back. I love the burst on the neck and the sides. It's a great sight to see. But here's a look at our stock pick guard. It's got some scratches, but again, at least the gold is in good shape. And our toggle switch ring's also pretty nice. It's got the gold lettering to it, helps it stand out. Unfortunately, even if you wanted to run this one as a pick guard off, not only do we have that giant screw hole here and on the edge of the guitar, but it sits so low on the body, it left a nasty impression from the backside of the bracket screw. So I'll just be plopping that one back on. I believe our last part to take an individual look at are our speed knobs. I might be saying, hey Trogly, why are those not aged? You gotta remember, around 84, 85, they switched the manufacturer of their knobs. They no longer age past that point. Now, I don't believe they specifically changed it for that. I think that's probably just whatever material they decided to use. But the way you can still tell that they're original is by how bold the numbers look. So I do not believe these have been replaced. The guitar appears to be completely stock, but after polishing, I was able to get rid of some of those surface level scratches, but again, ebony finish, it's never going to be 100% perfect. And in fact, after polishing away, I could actually see something kind of made some impressions in the finish right there. Almost looks like the side of a screwdriver, or maybe he was wearing a bracelet. It's just very lightly in the clear coat, but definitely noticeable in harsh lighting like this. Since it's not a metallic finish, it doesn't hide too well. But thankfully, no giant gouges on the top, because that's usually what you have on this model. Replaced parts and giant dings on the edge like you're seeing in these photos. At least this one over here didn't like completely break through the finish, just a few chips. The cleaning also brought out some of the finish checking, especially by our knobs, but I was going to be really shocked and maybe even suspicious if this guitar didn't have finish checking. It presents very nicely. But now, moving on from our alder body maple top, we've got that 3-piece maple neck with the rosewood fretboard. Now, I do want you to pay attention. It's 1981 when they start to transition back into mahogany necks. They get rid of the volutes. So the fact that this still has a maple neck outside of the regular maple neck era is kind of one of the interesting facts about the early Les Paul studios, I guess you could say. They also have these small dot inlays, and during the live stream, someone was saying, are those real mother of pearl? No, they're actually acrylic, but the acrylic they used in the 80s, even though usually I hate dot inlays as well, I think they look really smashing on these. Something about the figuring and the coloring that they have. I especially like it on the studio standards and customs with the additional layer of binding. But as with most frets of the era, they're not super tall by any means. I measure 0.057 if that means anything to you. And I get a 1.69 inch nut width, 2.06 at the 12, pretty skinny 0.81 first fret neck depth, and about 0.98 at the 12. Definitely a C-shaped neck. And it's fairly small right here. Don't believe those numbers. It doesn't get like super chunky. In fact, you really hardly even feel how it does get bigger there, but it does a bit. It's a very wide feeling neck. Here's a look at that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. Just nice and rounded, see? And also during the live stream, someone was saying this should have an ebony fretboard. I kind of agree. I've never got to appreciate the side profile shot of one of these before. That rosewood really does clash with the black and purple. Ebony would have been so much sweeter because then it would just look like the continuation of your black finish. But, whatever. We can't go back in time and change it now. We've got some beautiful dark streakage within that board. All things considered, do we have some mild fret wear? Just a little bit. You're only starting to barely see signs of that, but it's still a 12-inch fretboard radius and a 24 3/4-inch scale. Moving on to the face of the headstock, I wanted to take off the tuners to make cleaning easier. I mean, this looks fantastic now, but you always got to be careful doing that because sometimes those washers will be fused to the finish and you can get some chipping removing them. Thankfully, it looks like I got off scot-free. Most of them weren't stuck at all. But this is just a regular Gibson silkscreen. And in fact, we don't actually have any type of fiberboard or holly veneer, and you can tell that because a lot of these studios, the finishes will start to flake off of them. But you see this line right here? That's your headstock wing showing, so that proves to us that it's only finish over top of this. A lot of times these headstocks can be in very, very poor condition. That's part of the reason why it's so hard to collect an early Les Paul studio if you're looking for a clean one, as you'll always have some witness lines in finish checking. But here's the condition of our truss rod. Threads are just about even with the top of the nut. Appears to adjust just fine though. And these did come stock with a cover that reads Studio. Otherwise, it's just your usual stuff. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes you'll find these things stock with Tim Shaw PAF stickers on the rings. It's possible this came with it and the guy took them off. It's also possible that this did not have it, because another thing you'll find, sometimes these will have diamond posi lock strap buttons on them. So I took off the strap pins to see, are the ones on my guitar replaced? Did somebody steal them? And I can confidently say no, because the backside of original posi locks have a diamond etched pattern that disturbs the finish, and you'll always be able to tell if somebody's played swapperoonie. This one has the stock strap buttons as just the regular style. And even these guys are in really great shape for the gold. Really makes me wonder if mine was a particular special order with the Grovers, or were they just putting whatever gold hardware they had on, because that's the thing about these. Before I bought this one, I didn't even know Grover tuners was an option. I had always seen the Kluson style tuners. And there's two different ones that you can find here. There's the single ring double line version that has the two words within the lines on the back. And then there's the double ring double lined one with the Gibson branding running in between. That particular Gibson version one, you'll find that occasionally on some Flying V's. It was a very short-lived variation, but to get Grovers? On top of that, these are vintage milk bottle Grovers. This was back when Grovers were still made in the USA. As further proof of that, here it is, the USA on the back of the bottle. Even though the condition's not 100% perfect, this is a fascinating guitar in and of itself because it has the Grovers. But as with all of these small changes, we just have to document them as they pop up to see, you know, what is the most common. Just because this is the first one I've seen with Grovers doesn't mean that, hey, maybe it's the most common and might pop up later. Personally, I think the Klusons look the best, but trust me, in terms of feel and longevity, generally your sealed Grovers last you a lot longer. In other words, they've stood the test of time better. But another reason I took those tuners off is I wanted to prove that they were stock and that there weren't other filled-in holes for Kluson-style tuners, and I think this is evidence clear as day. Yep. That's the original set. That's how it left the factory, 100% guaranteed. And since we couldn't see the bare maple neck exposed anywhere else, this is another fantastic little spot to be able to see that and verify with our own eyes. Because when it comes to custom shop edition runs, sometimes they mess with other specs and you can't always see it right away. But you can see those headstock wings as well as some other finish checking back here. We got our Made in USA stamp and the serial number dating this one to very late 84, the 326th day of the year, production number 535. But besides just having better tuners, technically we get more gold on this one because it doesn't have those plastic button tips. It's even more gold. And here's the back with those things thrown back on. We're working in reverse order today. I did not see any stand rash along this edge or any chipped finish. A lot of times you'll see like that separation line between the fretboard and the neck on these, and they can get kind of gnarly. Now, yeah, we got 3 pretty nasty stand marks on the neck. Beggars can't be choosers, unfortunately. Like in the right lighting, you can see a few micro dings in the clear coat. But all things considered, it's a relatively decent survivor. But here we are onto the back of the body. Looks really nice and clean now that's been polished. But get it in the light just right. You can see all the vertical finish checking it does have. And we do have some buckle worming marks back here. So again, not complete minty condition, but still a very well preserved example. Even check out our edges. Outside of that ding, it was relatively unscathed. You do have a little bit of clear coat missing over top of that. But I've seen so many of these with touch-ups along the edges. The only other ding I ended up noticing was right over here, but it did not break the finish. But here's our control cavity. No Leonard family sign-offs, but another good spot to see our Alder body. So we have the 31st week of 1984 here. Looks like a matching up here. This one's another match to 84, as is this. Completely good. Now the solder worked to the pickups. You know, now that I'm in here, it's possible he might have tried something else in here, but I do believe those are original Tim Shaw PAFs. You can go either way. Suppose another telltale, there should be a yellow and red dot. So there's our yellow. And yep, sure enough, we got the red. That's good enough for me. And here's our toggle switch cavity, just for fun. No secret messages on our back plates. Although sometimes you do find them. Now let's do a blacklight test. Just make sure it passes all those. I would say the top looks really good. Forgot to point something out earlier. There's actually a small ding through the black paint that shows down through to the base coat, which is the purple coloring. I'll show you that in regular lighting here in a second. You can kind of see some of that. But our headstock is looking pretty nice. Don't have any clip-on tuner marks or anything. The backside then also has an even glow. Edges are looking nice. And no touch-ups here, so we're safe. We just have these stand rash marks that we already knew about. And the back, looking like so. It's not a very pretty finish underneath black light. Lots of green, but a flat color. This helps show how much of the clear coat was lost on those dings. Looks like 2 small areas. Whereas this one over here, we still have the clear coat on it. But I don't see any bad things, so I would say it's detailed history as far as repairs. I used to do B-rolls like this, the dark to the light. This is very appropriate. I think this is how Night Violet was meant to be viewed. It's supposed to be just a small spotlight. You see the flower. It's supposed to be dark. When it's spotlighted like this, I think you can see what their original idea was for this finish. Here you can see that ding through to the purple I was talking about. It's rather unfortunate. I had never noticed that until I cleaned it, and now it's just kind of a beauty mark that you'll always see when you're looking in the cutaway area. But all said and done, just the guitar weighs 8 pounds, 7.4 ounces. If you want me to put a pack of strings on it, it takes it up to 8.85. But oh, did you guys just hear that? It's the doorbell. The golden strings are here. Definitely not editing magic there. Let's go ahead and get those put on and hear how this sounded stock. First impressions? They really don't feel any different, and they don't look that impressive on the guitar. However, hear me out. The playing profile of them is very apparent and cool. It just really needs the matching golden fret wire now. First impressions of our tones? Very bright and airy. Now, does some of that come down to the strings? Maybe, but Tim Shaw PAFs are usually like that. Very country-like. You throw some dirt on.
You can tell this is a really microphonic set.
That can be a good or a bad thing, though. Yeah, you definitely have to be careful on that one. But if you roll it down to about a 8.5, you don't really get as much squealing. But again, on a big stage, you'd probably need to pot these things. But they do have a very interesting tone to them. So there we go, the Night Violet Les Paul Studio, finally documented on the show. Whether you like the purplyish pink beast or not, I hope you enjoyed learning about it, because as far as an early studio goes, this thing is just so fascinating. I also noticed something else kind of interesting about this. You never get to appreciate the top side of a headstock too often, but while I was over here sitting on my stand, that really caught my attention as, whoa, that's cool. And while shopping on Reverb, I came across an old mandolin case that maybe that's where this was inspired from, because it's black and has this kind of magenta interior. Very vampire-like too. As far as the tones, typical Tim Shaw era goodness. However, this is a really squealy set, and it's got a whole lot of fret buzz in the middle registers, and that's most likely due to a collapsed bridge. That's easy enough to replace should I ever want to, but I'm just going to keep this one stock and original. Now, as far as the golden strings, that's not necessarily the purpose of tonight's episode, A and B them, but if you are interested, hey, get this video to, let's say, 7,500 likes. I did buy a separate set. We could dive into that a little bit more if you guys really want to. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.